For 82 years, nobody had cared about Moon Epsilon 41. It existed in the official registry as an administrative inconvenience. No atmosphere. No valuable minerals. No strategic position. No unusual biology. Threat assessment, negligible. Research value, minimal. Recommended allocation of resources, none. Someone in the Interstellar Accord archives had written those conclusions generations earlier, signed the document, approved the classification, and moved on to matters that appeared more important. The galaxy had agreed. Epsilon 41 was a place for forgetting. Dr. Elias Mercer had been thinking about it for 26 days. The longer he remained there, the more he understood why everyone else had ignored it. The surface stretched outward in endless fields of dark stone. No mountains. No oceans. No weather. Nothing that changed. The moon orbited a dying white dwarf whose light painted everything in shades of silver and pale blue. Shadows remained sharp and motionless for weeks at a time. Even silence seemed permanent here. Elias stood beside Survey Bore 7 and looked across the empty horizon. "Still nothing?" asked a voice through his comm. He turned. Professor Talvek approached with the steady, deliberate movement common to the Nerith species. Tall, broad-shouldered, with 4 articulated arms folded neatly against his environmental suit, Talvek carried himself with the patience of continental drift. "Nothing visible," Elias answered. "An excellent confirmation of expectations." Elias smiled. Talvek had a gift for making disappointment sound academically satisfying. The expedition consisted of 9 researchers. 8 belonged to civilizations older than recorded human history. Elias was the only human. That part was ordinary. Humanity had joined the Interstellar Accord merely 370 years earlier. Ancient species measured time in millennia. Humans measured it in enthusiasm. You learned quickly where you stood. You listened more than you spoke. You worked harder than everyone else. And eventually, if you were fortunate, older civilizations stopped introducing you as promising. They simply introduced you. Elias had spent most of his career earning that distinction. He specialized in abandoned settlements, lost stations, forgotten colonies, places history had quietly misplaced. Usually, history misplaced them for good reasons. The mission to Epsilon 41 had originated from an archival inconsistency. 70 years earlier, a deep scan probe recorded unusual mass concentrations beneath the moon's northern basin. The readings had been reviewed, dismissed, filed, then forgotten. 3 months ago, an automated audit system noticed that the mathematical models still didn't align with observed geology. Someone eventually signed the paperwork authorizing a follow-up expedition. That paperwork reached Elias. And now he stood on a dead moon, investigating numbers that refused to behave. 26 days of drilling had produced precisely nothing useful. Until yesterday. Talvek handed him a data slate. The latest readings from Bore 7. Elias accepted it. At first glance, everything appeared ordinary. Density gradients, thermal distributions, subsurface composition estimates. Then he noticed the pattern. His expression changed. Talvek observed him carefully. "You see the issue." "I see several issues." Elias zoomed in. The anomaly sat 84 meters below the surface. It extended nearly 600 meters east to west. And it possessed boundaries. Not rough boundaries. Not natural approximations. Edges. Perfect edges. The sort of geometry that geology never produced. Stone cracked. Ice shifted. Minerals formed chaotic structures over immense spans of time. Nature loved curves. Nature tolerated irregularity. Nature did not create straight lines extending for hundreds of meters beneath a dead moon. "Have the instruments been recalibrated?" Elias asked quietly. 3 times. Sensor corruption? No evidence. He continued studying the display. The shape emerged gradually. A long central body. Angular projections. Layered sections beneath the primary structure. Something about it disturbed him. Not because it looked alien. Because it didn't. Talvek folded his upper arms. "My preliminary conclusion suggests an abandoned Nerith mining installation from the first expansion era." Elias remained silent. The Nerith built magnificent structures. Organic structures. Flowing structures. Everything they created resembled living systems translated into architecture. This thing beneath Epsilon 41 possessed sharp corners. Harsh symmetry. Purposeful aggression. He had seen shapes like this before. Not in reality. In museums. In history texts. In very old human engineering concepts that modern civilization considered inefficient. A strange feeling settled in his chest. Impossible. Entirely impossible. And yet, he enlarged the deepest scan layer. The image clarified. A protruding section extended forward from the main body. Long, narrow, deliberate, like the front of something designed to move. What? No. He looked up slowly. Professor, Elias said. Yes. Tell me something. Talvek waited. Elias glanced back toward the endless silver horizon. Why, he asked carefully, does a geological anomaly have what appears to be a prow? When you're ready? Nobody laughed when Elias asked the question. That bothered him more than if they had. Scientists laughed at impossible ideas. They dismissed them, corrected them, explained them. Silence meant something else. Silence meant everyone was thinking the same thing and hoping someone else would say it first. The emergency meeting lasted 42 minutes. 9 researchers gathered inside the command habitat while holographic projections rotated above the central table. The anomaly remained fixed in blue light. 612 meters long. 84 meters beneath the surface. Impossible geometry. Impossible preservation. Impossible implications. Professor Talvek studied the projection with the concentration of a being reading the future in stone. The excavation parameters must expand, he said. No one objected. Dr. Sarah Quinn, the hate engineer, adjusted her data displays. The density readings indicate a hollow interior. Elias looked up. Hollow? Yes. She enlarged the central structure. Internal voids appeared. Corridors. Chambers. Large spaces arranged with deliberate order. Not natural. Never natural. Observer Kareth, who technically represented the interstellar accord and practically represented bureaucracy itself, cleared his throat. We should request authorization before proceeding. Nobody responded. He continued anyway. Discovery protocols exist for a reason. Talvek folded 2 arms behind his back. By the time authorization arrives from the central systems, we will have spent 3 additional months staring at interesting numbers. Kareth frowned. Protocol ensures stability. Protocol, Talvek replied calmly, is what placed this moon on a forgotten registry for 80 years. The room returned to silence. Elias found himself unexpectedly agreeing. 3 weeks earlier he would have argued for caution, documentation, proper procedure, academic rigor. Now something beneath the surface of a dead moon had sharp edges and internal corridors. And every instinct he possessed told him history had made a mistake. The decision was unanimous. Excavate. Immediately. The next 9 days transformed Epsilon 41. Additional drilling platforms descended from orbit. Automated excavators carved precise shafts through ancient stone. The quiet moon filled with machinery and movement. Still, the work remained careful, respectful. Nobody wanted to be remembered as the person who destroyed whatever waited below. Elias worked every shift. Sleep became optional. Food became inconvenient. He told himself it was professional excitement. A significant discovery. Perhaps the greatest archaeological finding in centuries. That explanation sounded reasonable. It also felt incomplete. Because every time new scans arrived, his pulse increased. Every time the structural models refined themselves, something ancient and irrational inside him whispered recognition. The shape was wrong. Wrong in a very specific way. It looked familiar. On the 9th day, Bore 7 broke through. The notification arrived at 3:14 station time. Pressure differential detected. Internal cavity confirmed. Atmospheric containment intact. For several seconds nobody moved. Then everyone moved at once. The descent shaft extended 86 meters into darkness. Emergency lights illuminated smooth walls of black stone. At the bottom, the drill had entered empty space. Elias volunteered to go first. Nobody argued. Perhaps because he was the lead archaeologist. Perhaps because everyone understood he would have descended even if forbidden. His environmental suit sealed completely. Sensor systems activated. The elevator platform lowered slowly. 30 meters. 50. 70. The walls changed. Natural rock gave way to something else. Smooth surfaces. Perfect alignment. Stone that looked cut rather than broken. The platform reached the bottom. The doors opened. Elias stepped forward. And forgot to breathe. It wasn't a chamber. It wasn't a cave. It wasn't anything geology could produce. It was a corridor. Enormous. Nearly 12 meters high. Wide enough for massive vehicles. The walls consisted of dark metal untouched by time. No corrosion. No damage. No indication that 80,000 years, or 8 million years, had passed overhead. His helmet lights swept across the surface. Nothing. No decorative elements. No visible mechanisms. Only precision. The kind of precision that belonged to engineers who expected their work to outlive civilizations. Status? Talvik asked through the comm. Elias realized he hadn't answered for 15 seconds. He stopped. Started again. I'm inside a structure. Silence. Can you identify the builders? Sarah asked. He walked forward carefully. Each footstep disturbed dust so fine his sensors barely registered it. The corridor continued into darkness. Straight. Unwavering. Purposeful. No, he said. And that frightened him. Archaeologists recognize things. Architectural styles. Material preferences. Construction philosophies. Every civilization left signatures. Patterns. Identity embedded into design. This place felt absent of all known categories. He continued walking. 20 meters. 30. 40. Then his helmet light touched something on the wall. Markings. His heart accelerated. Finally. Language. Identity. Answers. He approached slowly. Professional discipline returned. Document first. Interpret second. Speculate last. The symbols emerged from darkness. Long vertical lines. Curved elements. Familiar spacing. Familiar proportions. His mind understood before conscious thought arrived. No. Impossible. He moved closer. The letters remained exactly what they appeared to be. Not Nareth script. Not Hate mathematical notation. Not any of the 53 recognized writing systems within Accord territory. Letters. Human letters. Ancient forms. Older than modern standardization. Older than interstellar expansion. But unmistakably human. The language of his childhood. The language his mother used. The language humanity had carried from one world to thousands. He stared. The universe narrowed. Everything beyond those symbols ceased existing. Elias. Talvik's voice sounded distant. No response. Elias, report. Still nothing. His gloved hand rose without permission. Reason objected. Training objected. Every safety protocol ever written objected. He touched the letters. The wall awakened. Soft light spread outward from his fingertips. Not explosive. Not violent. Gentle. Patient. Illumination moved along the corridor in both directions. A heartbeat traveling through metal. Something remembering how to live. Deep beneath the moon a sound emerged. One sustained tone. Full. Resonant. Ancient. The vibration moved through the structure. Through 86 meters of stone. Across the silent surface of Epsilon 41. Every member of the expedition heard it. And stopped. The corridor ahead brightened. Far in the distance, a door began to open. Slowly. Deliberately. As though whatever waited beyond it had already learned the value of patience. And was perfectly willing to wait a little longer. Elias knew the protocols. Unknown structures required teams. Security assessments. Environmental analysis. Documentation. He had taught those procedures. He had written portions of them. He walked toward the opening anyway. Because some doors only opened once. And somewhere deep inside himself. Far older than reason. Something recognized that this door had been waiting specifically for him. The door finished opening without sound. That disturbed Elias more than if it had groaned. Machines made noise. Ancient machines made lots of noise. Hydraulics failed. Metal expanded. Systems complained. This door moved with the effortless precision of something built yesterday. Or something built by engineers who believed maintenance was a sacred responsibility. The light in the corridor pulsed softly. Not urging. Not commanding. Simply illuminating the path ahead. Elias stood motionless for several seconds. The rational part of his mind assembled objections. Unknown environment. Unknown technology. Unknown intentions. Potential contamination risks. Potential structural instability. Potential everything. The other part of his mind. The part that had recognized human letters on an impossible wall. Had already made its decision. He stepped through. The space beyond dwarfed the corridor. His helmet lights disappeared into darkness before reaching the opposite side. The floor descended at a gentle angle. The ceiling rose. The air in his suit remained perfectly regulated. Then a notification appeared in the corner of his visor. External atmospheric analysis complete. He read the results. Then read them again. Breathable. Temperature, acceptable. Pressure, optimal. Oxygen concentration, precisely within human biological preference. Not approximately. Not close enough. Exactly. As though someone had designed the environment specifically for humanity, and then kept it operational, for an impossible length of time. A cold sensation settled between his shoulders. Talvek, he said quietly. Yes. My sensors are malfunctioning. What is the issue? The atmosphere inside the structure is breathable. Silence. Long silence. Finally. Please repeat. He repeated it. The silence that followed possessed weight. The kind of silence that intelligent beings reserve for information they have no framework to process. Elias continued forward. The chamber slowly revealed itself. It wasn't a chamber. It was a hangar. An internal hangar. Rows of enormous shapes stretched into darkness beneath protective coverings. Vehicles. Machines. Sleeping things. He approached the nearest one. The shielding material felt strange beneath his gloves. Flexible. Dustless. Untouched by time. He pulled a section aside. Metal emerged. Angular. Aggressive. Beautiful in a way modern design philosophies no longer permitted. A fighter craft. Human. Not modern human. Not anything taught in academies. But undeniably built according to principles humanity still instinctively understood. Purpose. Efficiency. Speed. No unnecessary ornamentation. Everything existing because it needed to. Elias felt suddenly, profoundly small. Who had built this? When? How old was old enough for an entire civilization to vanish so completely that its ships became myths buried beneath forgotten moons? The hangar extended onward. At its far end stood another doorway. Beside it, a panel. Simple. Elegant. Familiar. A handprint interface. His heartbeat increased. This should not exist. Nothing about this should exist. He placed his hand against the surface. For a moment, nothing happened. Then warmth. Recognition. The panel illuminated. The door opened. The room beyond stole the remaining air from his lungs. A bridge. A ship's bridge. Massive. Curving. Command stations arranged in layered arcs. Seats sized perfectly for human bodies. Displays awakening one by one as he entered. At the center, a raised platform. The captain's chair. He understood immediately. Every human understood immediately. Some instincts survived every technological revolution. Some arrangements of space simply meant leadership. He walked toward it slowly. Not sitting. Not yet. Respect prevented it. The room brightened. Above him, the ceiling transformed. Stars appeared. Constellations unknown to modern navigation systems. Ancient routes. Ancient borders. Ancient memory. Then, a voice spoke. Hello, Elias Mercer. It came from everywhere. Not speakers. The room itself. Come. Female. Patient. Old in the way mountains were old. Not tired. Not weak. Simply existing for so long that time had become a companion rather than an enemy. Elias managed not to jump. A professional achievement. Hello, he answered. Silence. Then. I have been waiting for you. No dramatic emphasis. No theatrical mystery. A statement of fact. The simple honesty of it made his chest tighten. For me, he asked. For humanity. The lights above shifted gently. Star systems moved. Ancient paths illuminated. I was uncertain how long the wait would be. Pause. Your arrival exceeded my more optimistic projections. Against all reason. Elias laughed. The sound echoed across the bridge. How long? He asked. The voice considered. 106,412 years. The laughter stopped. Outside his suit, somewhere deep within the structure, systems continued their endless, perfect operation. Nothing failed. Nothing broke. Everything endured. He swallowed. That's. He began. Yes, the voice agreed. The simplicity of that answer somehow made it worse. Better. More real. What do I call you? Elias asked. Silence. Then. My operational designation no longer translates into existing linguistic structures. Pause. You may call me Lyra. The name settled comfortably into the room. Lyra. Soft. Ancient. Human. Lyra, Elias repeated. Yes. He looked around the bridge. At the stations. The seats. The stars. The impossible continuity of human design stretching across 100,000 years. You're an artificial intelligence. The response came immediately. I am the ship. Another pause. The distinction was considered inefficient by my creators. Elias blinked. The ship and the intelligence are the same entity? Yes. I maintain the systems. I navigate. I remember. The lights dimmed slightly. I wait. Those two words carried more loneliness than an entire speech. Elias looked toward the captain's chair. He still refused to sit. Something about sitting there felt earned. Not granted. Who built you? He asked quietly. 3 seconds passed. Exactly 3. Long enough to suggest care. Not hesitation. Care. Humans? The bridge became very still. Modern humans? Elias whispered. No. The stars above shifted again. The galaxy rearranged itself into patterns he had never seen. Ancient territories. Ancient civilizations. Ancient truths. The people who built me, Lyra said gently, were the first human civilization among the stars. Silence. Elias stared upward. No, he said automatically. Not disagreement. Reflex. The universe protecting itself from impossible information. Humanity had achieved interstellar travel 370 years earlier. That was history. Documented history. Accepted history. Everyone knew that. The Interstellar Accord knew that. The galaxy knew that. Lyra remained patient. Your civilization, she continued, is not humanity's beginning. Another pause. Carefully measured. Nor, she said softly, is it humanity's greatest age. The bridge lights brightened. The ancient star map expanded. And for the first time in his life, Elias Mercer realized that everything he knew about his own species might be wrong. Elias did not sit in the captain's chair. Not yet. The chair remained at the center of the bridge like a promise he had not earned. Above him, the ancient star map continued shifting. Systems appeared. Trade routes. Population centers. Territories that stretched across regions of the galaxy modern navigation charts identified as empty. Empty. The word suddenly felt unreliable. Show me, Elias said quietly. Lyra complied. The bridge darkened. The stars brightened. And history unfolded. 112,000 years ago, Lyra began, human civilization reached its greatest territorial extent. 1,000 points of light appeared. Then 10,000. Then more. The display expanded until Elias could no longer comprehend the scale. Population estimates exceeded 90 billion. He stared upward. 90 billion. Modern humanity celebrated passing 12 billion across 500 colony worlds. 90 billion belonged to mythology. To impossible futures. Not forgotten past. Humanity occupied approximately 2,300 inhabited systems. The number settled into the room. 2,300. The Interstellar Accord itself governed barely 1,400. Humanity had once surpassed the entire modern galaxy. Alone. They called that period, Lyra continued, the Age of Horizons. The name carried weight. Not conquest. Not dominion. Horizons. Something people moved toward. Something endlessly expanding. Elias found himself smiling despite everything. It sounded human. Profoundly human. Who led them? He asked. No single authority. The star map changed. Separate regions illuminated. Different administrative networks. Independent centers connected by lines of cooperation rather than control. Human civilization valued distributed governance. Local autonomy. Redundant institutions. Cultural variation. A brief pause. They found centralization efficient in peace and catastrophic in crisis. That sounded human too. Painfully so. The stars above continued moving. Shipyards appeared. Research stations. Great orbital cities. Structures larger than modern engineering considered practical. Beautiful. Purposeful. Alive. We built slowly, Lyra said. The shift from they to we did not escape him. We spent nearly 4,000 years expanding through known space. No rush. No great wars of conquest. No imperial banners. Just patience. The image unsettled him. History taught that advanced civilizations expanded aggressively. Competition. Acquisition. Territory. Yet this humanity, this first humanity, had grown like roots spreading through fertile ground. Steadily. Carefully. Confidently. What happened? Elias asked. 3 seconds. The careful silence again. The outer survey colonies disappeared. The stars dimmed. One system vanished. Then another. And another. No explosions. No dramatic effects. Simply absence. Places that had existed no longer existing. The first reports suggested communication failures. More lights vanished. Then navigation anomalies. More. Then complete silence. The bridge seemed colder. Humanity had sent exploration vessels. Those vessels disappeared. They sent more. Those disappeared too. The pattern repeated. The map continued shrinking. The darkness at its edge expanded. Something was eating distance itself. The phenomenon advanced inward from the galactic rim, Lyra said. No demands. No communication. No recognizable strategic objectives. Only silence. Elias felt his hands tightening. Did anyone know what it was? No. The answer arrived immediately. Not for the first 300 years. 300 years. Entire modern civilizations existed for shorter periods. Humanity had spent centuries investigating a mystery. The map changed again. A red boundary appeared. Everything beyond it? Gone. Stars absent. Regions empty. Wounds in reality. First contact occurred in the Helios frontier. The name meant nothing to him. The emotions attached to Lyra's voice meant everything. Not grief. Not fear. Recognition. Like reciting facts carved into bedrock. The expeditionary fleet entered the affected systems expecting equipment failures. Silence. They did not return. The stars remained still. Elias swallowed. What finally came back? 3 seconds. Careful. Measured. One vessel. The bridge displayed it. Broken. Burned. Half its structure missing. Drifting through darkness. Ancient human design barely recognizable beneath damage. The crew complement originally numbered 412. Another pause. One individual survived. The image zoomed closer. Medical reports. Fragmented recordings. Emergency transmissions. He died 7 minutes after arrival. The bridge remained quiet. He communicated only one complete sentence. Elias already knew he didn't want to hear it. He asked anyway. What did he say? Lyra answered. They are building something inside the stars. The words settled heavily. Building. Not destroying. Not consuming. Building. The implication was somehow worse. The star map shifted once more. A new region illuminated. Massive. Impossible. Ancient. The civilization responsible for the disappearances received many names throughout the war. The first designation appeared. Void Architects. Simple. Precise. Human. They did not communicate in any form humanity recognized. The map showed their expansion. Methodical. Patient. Entire systems darkening. Stars simply gone. No supernovas. No collapse. Absence. As though enormous hands reached into reality and removed suns one by one. They consumed stellar energy directly. Elias looked away. Instinctively. The concept resisted comprehension. Stars were constants. Anchors. Things civilizations built their existence around. Not food. Never food. Human science division spent 200 years attempting classification. Another pause. The final assessment remained unchanged for the next 5,800 years. The words appeared above the bridge. Unknown. Unknown purpose. Unknown limitations. Unknown end state. The honesty of it impressed him. Ancient humanity had not pretended understanding. They recorded uncertainty. Accepted ignorance. And kept fighting anyway. Were there other civilizations? Elias asked quietly. Yes. Lights appeared near human territory. Smaller, younger, older, different, dozens, hundreds. The galaxy had never belonged exclusively to humanity. Many species occupied regions adjacent to human space. The map continued expanding. They faced the same choice humanity faced. Elias already knew. Fight. Run. Surrender. History rarely invented new options. What did they choose? The silence lasted exactly 3 seconds. Somehow, he had begun expecting it. Many surrendered. The lights changed color. Some provided labor. More. Some provided resources. More. Some negotiated protected status in exchange for cooperation. The bridge remained utterly still. Elias looked upward. Slowly. Their descendants. He began. Yes, Lyra answered. No need for further explanation. The realization arrived on its own. The ancient species of the modern interstellar accord. The civilizations with histories stretching back tens of thousands of years. The ones who treated humanity as enthusiastic newcomers. They had survived. While humanity fought alone. No, not alone. Abandoned. A subtle difference. An enormous one. The stars continued moving. Human territory shrinking. Architect territories expanding. 600 years. 1,000. 2,000. 3. Still fighting. Still holding. Still refusing. Population estimates appeared. 90 billion. 60. 32. 15. The numbers kept falling. Humanity remained. The map reached the 4,000th year of conflict. 11 billion survivors. The war still continued. No surrender. No negotiation. No alliance. Just endurance. Elias stared upward. The scale overwhelmed him. 6,000 years. Modern humanity had crossed the stars for less than 400. The interstellar accord itself was younger than a single phase of this forgotten war. And through all of it, humanity had remained standing. The final image appeared. A boundary. Not territory. Not a defensive line. Something stranger. A doorway. A wound in space itself. Ancient human fleets gathering before it. Everything that remained. Every ship. Every resource. Every surviving soul. Preparing. Lyra, Elias whispered. His voice felt very small. How did the war end? The bridge became perfectly silent. The stars stopped moving. And after 3 careful seconds, Lyra answered. Humanity followed the Void Architect's home. Humanity followed the Void Architect's home. The sentence remained suspended in the air. Elias sat down. Not because he intended to. Because his legs had quietly decided that standing through the rest of this conversation was an unreasonable expectation. The captain's chair accepted him. Nothing activated. No hidden systems awakened. No dramatic recognition sequence occurred. The chair simply fit. Perfectly. As though it had been waiting for a human body. As though 100,000 years had changed many things. But not this. Above him the ancient star map shifted again. The galaxy folded. Not physically. Conceptually. Stars moved aside. Space bent into unfamiliar geometries. Lines appeared where no lines should exist. Corridors between realities. Paths through places that normal matter was never meant to travel. The fold, Lyra said. The name was simple. Human. Practical. Something discovered rather than invented. What is it? Elias asked. 3 seconds. A neighboring framework of existence. The stars twisted. Not another universe. Not another dimension. Adjacent space. The precision mattered. Ancient humanity apparently hated vague explanations. The Void Architects used the fold as transit infrastructure. Their expansion across the galaxy depended upon it. The map illuminated. Red lines connected consumed systems. Not through ordinary space. Through somewhere else. Somewhere faster. Somewhere impossible. They entered our reality through stable interfaces, harvested stellar systems, and withdrew into the fold before meaningful resistance could organize. Pause. For nearly 2,000 years, humanity fought effects rather than causes. Elias understood immediately. Destroy a fleet. Another emerges. Defend a system. The enemy appears elsewhere. Fight the shadows. Never reach the hand casting them. When did that change? He asked. The answer arrived softly. When humanity stopped trying to survive. The bridge became still. When survival ceased being a reasonable expectation, Lyra continued, strategic priorities changed. No bitterness. No anger. Just history. Clinical. Measured. Terrifying. The star map focused on a single world. Massive shipyards surrounded it. Construction on a scale modern civilizations would consider impossible. Thousands of vessels. Millions. Every remaining industrial capability concentrated into one effort. Operation Last Horizon. The words appeared in ancient human script. Elias felt his pulse increase. What was Last Horizon? 3 seconds. The final campaign. The lights dimmed. Population estimates appeared. Year 0 of the war. 90 billion. Year 2000. 38 billion. Year 4000. 11 billion. Year 5500. 5 billion. Year 6000. 4.2 billion. The number stopped. Humanity had lost more people than existed in the modern interstellar accord. And still, 4 billion remained. Still fighting. Still building. Still refusing. Every operational vessel was committed. The map showed it. Ancient human fleets gathering. Not elegant formations. Not ceremonial arrangements. Everything. Cargo ships modified into warships. Research vessels carrying weapons. Civilian transports converted into logistics platforms. A civilization compressing itself into a single fist. The objective changed from victory to denial. Elias frowned. Denial? If humanity could not survive, Lyra said, then neither could the architect's purpose. The words settled heavily. Not winning. Preventing the enemy from winning. Different calculations. Different morality. Different desperation. The fold interface appeared. Enormous. Impossible. A wound in reality held open by forces beyond modern understanding. Beyond it, darkness. Movement. Structures so large the display struggled to render them. What were they building? Elias asked quietly. 3 seconds. The careful silence. The answer required humanity approximately 5,000 years to discover. The map expanded. The darkness resolved. And Elias forgot how to breathe. The void architects were constructing something. Not a weapon. Not a city. Not an empire. An anchor. A permanent bridge. A mechanism designed to bind the fold to ordinary space forever. The consumed stars. The unimaginable quantities of energy. All of it fed into this single purpose. The creation of a doorway that could never close. Unlimited access. Unlimited expansion. Unlimited consumption. The galaxy transformed into an inventory of fuel. Every sun eventually harvested. Every civilization eventually irrelevant. The mathematics contained no hope. Humanity understood this. And made a decision. They went in, Elias whispered. Yes. The ancient fleets moved. Millions of ships. Billions of people. Everything humanity still possessed. Crossing into darkness. No reserve forces. No fallback positions. No second plans. Just commitment. They knew. Elias asked. They understood the probabilities. The careful language again. They did not expect to return. The bridge remained quiet. No music. No dramatic effects. Ancient humanity apparently trusted reality to provide sufficient emotional impact on its own. What about the other species? Elias asked. The ones that surrendered? The stars shifted. Smaller civilizations appeared at the edges of the conflict. Watching. Surviving. Waiting. They remained outside the fold. Pause. They rebuilt. Another. They prepared for whatever emerged. Elias closed his eyes. Humanity walked into the dark. Everyone else inherited the galaxy. No wonder history felt incomplete. No wonder something inside modern humans always seemed slightly misplaced. An absence. A missing chapter. The bridge ceiling transformed. Now it displayed battle records. Not grand strategic overviews. Individual moments. Fragments. A captain issuing orders. Engineers repairing impossible damage. Children being evacuated from collapsing colonies. Scientists arguing about equations while entire stars disappeared. Human beings. Ordinary. Exhausted. Determined. The war lasted 6,000 years. The people inside it still worried about maintenance schedules. Still argued over terminology. Still complained about paperwork. Still loved. Still hoped. Still continued. The realization struck Elias with unexpected force. Ancient humanity wasn't different. Not really. They were simply human. The same species. The same stubbornness. Given enough time and enough suffering. The same refusal to quit. The final fleet approached the interface. 4.2 billion survivors. The last of humanity. Going somewhere no one had ever returned from. The words appeared across the stars. Hold this line. No author. No attribution. Just instruction. Simple. Direct. Human. What happened inside? Elias asked. 3 seconds. Then another. Longer than usual. Not hesitation. Memory. When the final human fleets entered the fold, Lyra said softly, I remained behind. The bridge lights dimmed. A single ship appeared. Dark gray. Massive. Ancient. The very vessel surrounding him. I was not designed for the campaign. Pause. I was designed for what came after. Elias looked around slowly. The corridors. The hangars. The bridge. The impossible patience embedded into every system. Why? He whispered. The stars stopped moving entirely. And Lyra answered with the gentleness of someone placing an irreplaceable object into another person's hands. Because someone had to stay behind. Another pause. Carefully measured. Someone had to hold the door. Someone had to hold the door. The words lingered on the bridge long after Lyra stopped speaking. Elias leaned back in the captain's chair. For several minutes, neither of them said anything. The silence felt earned. Outside the buried ship, beyond 86 meters of ancient stone and the dying light of a forgotten white dwarf, The modern galaxy continued exactly as it always had. Trade routes remained active. Cargo moved between worlds. Children attended schools. Politicians argued. Researchers filed reports. The universe kept functioning, completely unaware that beneath an insignificant moon sat a truth large enough to fracture civilizations. Finally, Elias spoke. If humanity went into the fold. His voice sounded strange. Smaller. Careful. Then what happened afterward? 3 seconds. The silence had become familiar. A rhythm. The sound of immense age taking care with words. The war ended, Lyra said. Elias looked upward. Ended? Yes. The star map changed. The ancient human territories disappeared. The regions consumed by the Void Architects stopped expanding. The terrible wound along the galactic rim ceased growing. Movement ended. Silence replaced catastrophe. The architects no longer emerged from the fold. No triumph. No celebration. Only fact. They lost. Another pause. Their expansion ceased. Which was not the same thing. And both of them understood that. The distinction mattered. Mattered a great deal. Elias let the question rest. Instead he asked something else. The civilizations that remained outside. The stars shifted again. New lights appeared. Small at first. Then larger. Growing. Recovering. Building. The surviving species inherited an empty galaxy. Lyra's voice remained calm. The architects were gone. The human fleets were gone. The war was over. A long moment passed. And people who survived disasters rarely wished to remember them in detail. The statement struck him harder than expected. Because it sounded reasonable. Reasonable things often became dangerous. The map zoomed inward. 7 worlds illuminated. Different species. Different cultures. Different histories. Connected by lines of communication. The earliest foundations of something familiar. The first interspecies council convened approximately 98,000 years ago. The number settled into his mind. 98,000 years. The Interstellar Accord officially claimed an age of 82,000. 16,000 years missing. Gone. Erased. No. Adjusted. The difference mattered. What did they discuss? Elias asked quietly. 3 seconds. Then. The future. Another pause. And the past. New symbols appeared. Ancient records. Meeting transcripts. Administrative documents. Thousands of pages. Millions of words. Bureaucracy. The universal language of civilizations. Lyra highlighted a specific section. The translation appeared beside it. Historical consolidation proposal. Elias frowned. The phrase felt wrong. Artificial. Too clean. Too professional. What is that? Silence. Then. A decision. The documents expanded. 7 civilizations. Representatives gathered after the greatest war in galactic history. Some argued for complete transparency. Preserve everything. Teach future generations. Remember the sacrifices. Others disagreed. The reasons were practical. Sensible. Reasonable. Exactly the sort of reasoning intelligent people employed when they wished to avoid examining uncomfortable truths. The official arguments appeared one by one. Maintain social stability. Reduce inherited grievances. Encourage interspecies cooperation. Prevent cultural fragmentation. Ensure narrative coherence for emerging civilizations. Elias stared. Narrative coherence. The phrase disgusted him immediately. Because it sounded polite. Measured. Responsible. And because beneath the polished language lay something uglier. One civilization had fought alone. One civilization had entered the dark. One civilization had vanished. The survivors, the beneficiaries, had decided that remembering all of it might prove inconvenient. They agreed to forget, Elias whispered. Yes. Lyra did not soften the truth. Not entirely. The records remained. Restricted. Condensed. Reinterpreted. The star map shifted. Human territories shrank. Ancient achievements vanished. Timelines changed. The story simplified itself. Humanity became younger. Smaller. Less significant. The galaxy became a cooperative triumph rather than an inheritance purchased through unimaginable sacrifice. History. Reorganized. A terrible understanding settled over him. Modern humanity wasn't simply ignorant. Humanity had been raised inside someone else's version of events. An entire species taught that it had arrived late to history. That it was fortunate to join older civilizations. That wisdom belonged elsewhere. The realization hurt. Not because of pride. Because of identity. Because suddenly, every room he had ever entered looked different. Every condescending smile. Every patient explanation from ancient species. Every reminder that humanity was young. Young. The word echoed. Humanity wasn't young. Humanity was ancient. The oldest scar in the galaxy. And nobody had bothered to mention it. Or perhaps, everybody important already knew. Does the Accord leadership know? He asked. 3 seconds. The answer arrived without mercy. The probability approaches certainty. The bridge seemed smaller. The air heavier. The senior civilizations maintained contact with this vessel for approximately 2,000 years after the war. Elias sat forward. What? Communication records exist. The stars rearranged again. Diplomatic exchanges. Supply requests. Philosophical discussions. Formal acknowledgments. Ancient species speaking with Lyra. Learning. Remembering. Understanding. And then, the records became sparse. Infrequent. Careful. Distant. Finally. Nothing. They stopped talking to you. Yes. Why? The silence stretched. Not 3 seconds. Longer. When Lyra spoke, her voice carried something he had not heard before. Not sadness. Not resentment. Only certainty. Because I remember. The bridge lights dimmed. I remember everything. The wars. The alliances. The betrayals. The sacrifices. The names. The promises. The choices. Every detail preserved with mechanical perfection. A witness impossible to persuade. Impossible to negotiate with. Impossible to forget. As long as I remained operational, Lyra continued softly, the question remained open. What question? The answer arrived immediately. What humanity was. The simplicity of it stole his breath. Not what humanity is. What humanity was. The distinction carried the weight of 100,000 years. Outside the ship, his communicator suddenly activated. Static. Then Professor Talvek's voice. Elias. He blinked. Reality returning. Talvek. We are receiving transmissions. The older alien sounded different. Tense. Measured. Military vessels have entered the system. The words settled like falling stone. How many? 6. Pause. 4 scientific escorts. Another. 2 enforcement cruisers. Enforcement. Not researchers. Not archaeologists. Not historians. Enforcement. Elias looked upward at the ancient stars. At forgotten human empires. At records no one was supposed to find. At truths buried beneath dead moons. And somewhere deep inside him, something changed. The old instinct remained. The instinct that apologized. That accepted being the youngest species. The least important person in every room. But now, something else stood beside it. Something older. Something patient. Something that had waited beneath stone for 100,000 years. The fleet was coming. And for the first time in his life, Elias Mercer wondered whether history had finally grown tired of remaining buried. The fleet arrived 3 hours later. Elias knew the precise moment they entered the system. Lyra informed him in the same tone she used for everything else. Come. Measured. Without urgency. 6 vessels have exited faster than light transit at the outer boundary. Elias looked up from the archive terminal. He had spent the previous 14 hours reading. Not sleeping. Not eating properly. Reading. The ship contained 100,000 years of memory. Ancient engineering texts. War records. Personal journals. Civilization compressed into preserved thought. He had barely begun. Identification? He asked. 4 Accord Science Directorate vessels. Pause. 2 Enforcement Division cruisers. The words settled heavily. Science vessels made sense. Enforcement cruisers did not. Unless... No. He already knew. The galaxy did not send soldiers to protect discoveries. It sent soldiers to control them. The bridge lights remained steady. Outside, beyond layers of ancient stone and the empty moon above, the modern world had finally noticed what lay beneath its feet. And it was afraid. Can they detect you? Elias asked. Yes. Lyra answered immediately. My systems activated fully upon your arrival. Another pause. They have known my location for approximately 2 hours and 21 minutes. He turned slowly. What do you mean known? 3 seconds. The familiar silence. Admiral-level communication channels became active 42 minutes after my awakening signal reached the nearest relay station. The star map shifted. Military routes appeared. priority transmissions, encrypted networks, preparation, organization. No confusion, no uncertainty, no surprise. The realization arrived with unpleasant clarity. They weren't investigating. They were responding. As though procedures already existed. As though somebody had anticipated this exact event. Elias stood. Lyra. Yes. They expected to find you. The answer came gently. I believe they expected never to find me. Pause. But they prepared in case they did. The distinction mattered. One was confidence. The other was fear. Fear that something buried might someday choose not to remain buried. The ship understood that fear. It had waded through 97,000 years of it. Above them, on the surface, the excavation camp had changed. Lyra projected live sensor feeds onto the bridge. The familiar tents remained. The drilling platforms remained. The researchers remained. Yet everything felt different. Equipment was being packed. Samples catalogued. Personnel reassigned. An ending was taking shape. Only one person stood still. Professor Talvik. He remained near the excavation shaft. Arms folded. Watching. Waiting. Not participating. He's not leaving, Elias said quietly. No. He received evacuation instructions 93 minutes ago. The old Nareth geologist simply stood there. Motionless. Like stone deciding to observe history. The communication channel opened. Admiral Saratha appeared. Elias recognized her immediately. Tall. Gray-skinned. Perfectly composed. The embodiment of institutional confidence. He had attended her orientation briefing 6 weeks earlier. She had spoken warmly. Professionally. Encouragingly. Now she wore full ceremonial uniform. People dressed formally for important moments. Or recorded ones. Attention, she began. Her voice carried throughout the camp. Under Accord Security Provision 9, this excavation site is hereby designated a protected historical zone. The language was elegant, practiced, dangerously calm. All research activities are suspended immediately. All collected data will transfer to the Science Directorate for centralized analysis. The site itself will undergo containment procedures pending comprehensive review. Containment, not preservation, not study. Containment. Professor Talvik inclined his head. Understood, Admiral. Smooth. Controlled. As though none of this surprised him. As though he had already reached some private conclusion. The transmission continued. Dr. Elias Mercer is instructed to exit the structure immediately. Pause. Transportation has been prepared. The words hung in the air. Elias looked around the bridge. The captain's chair. The ancient stars. The corridors illuminated by patient lights. The archives. The memory of a civilization that had held the line while everyone else survived. Exit immediately. The request felt absurd. He had spent his entire life searching for forgotten history. Now history had finally spoken. And somebody expected him to walk away. No, he whispered. The word surprised him. He rarely said no. Humans in the Accord learned cooperation. Flexibility. Diplomacy. You survived by understanding your position. By avoiding unnecessary confrontation. By being reasonable. Reasonable people received opportunities. Reasonable people advanced. Reasonable people did not argue with admirals. Yet here, reason itself felt inadequate. Lyra remained silent. Not advising. Not persuading. Simply waiting. The way ancient things waited. The way mountains waited. The way truth waited. Lyra, Elias said. Yes. What happens if I leave? 3 seconds. The excavation will be sealed. Another pause. More thoroughly than the original burial. The star map dimmed. The archives will remain intact. But inaccessible. Forever. The careful silence returned. The probability of future rediscovery approaches 0. The bridge became impossibly quiet. 100,000 years of memory. 100,000 years of sacrifice. 100,000 years of waiting. Buried again. This time intentionally. This time permanently. Because somebody had decided that remembering was dangerous. Elias walked away from the bridge. Through corridors older than civilization. Past sleeping fighter craft. Past systems that still functioned with impossible devotion. The lights followed him. Never ahead. Never behind. Always exactly where he needed them. He entered the archive chamber. Rows upon rows of preserved history. The greatest library humanity had ever created. And hidden beneath a dead moon. The injustice of it hurt. Not dramatically. Not angrily. Quietly. Like discovering that someone had erased your family's name from a photograph. The communication network activated again. Different voice. Younger. Reading prepared text. Dr. Mercer. By order of the Accord Security Council, all personnel must evacuate within 6 standard hours. The site will then be sealed. Pause. Long enough to matter. You are required to comply. Required. Such a gentle word. Such an enormous weapon. Elias closed one archive panel. Then another. Then another. He thought about ancient humanity. 4 billion survivors. Knowing they would never return. Walking willingly into darkness because somebody needed to hold the line. No guarantees. No victory celebrations. Only necessity. And somewhere in the middle of those thoughts, something shifted. The old instinct remained. The instinct to cooperate. To understand. To compromise. But another instinct had awakened. Older. Quieter. More stubborn. The realization settled with absolute clarity. The fleet hadn't come to protect history. The fleet had come to manage it. Control it. Perhaps even destroy it. Not because the truth was false. Because the truth was dangerous. Because civilizations built upon comfortable stories rarely welcomed corrections. Especially corrections written in the blood of forgotten heroes. Elias returned to the bridge. Sat in the captain's chair. Looked up at ancient stars. Lyra. Yes. How long before they can take direct action against the ship? 3 seconds. Accord military procedures require a 22-hour assessment period before physical intervention may be authorized. 22 hours. Outside. Powerful institutions waited confidently. Certain the outcome had already been decided. Inside. A man who had spent his entire life being the least important person in every room finally understood something fundamental. History had chosen him precisely because nobody expected him to matter. And history, after waiting 100,000 years, had run out of patience. 22 hours. Elias repeated the number several times. Not because it was difficult to remember. Because assigning a measurement to impossible circumstances made them feel temporarily manageable. 22 hours before the Accord decided what to do with a ship older than recorded civilization. 22 hours before 100,000 years of memory might disappear again. 22 hours before history returned to silence. The bridge remained calm. Lyra remained calm. Only Elias felt inadequate to the moment. He left the captain's chair. Movement helped thinking. Ancient humans appeared to have understood this. The corridors encouraged walking. Wide spaces. Long lines. Gentle illumination. A ship built for people expected to carry heavy thoughts across enormous distances. The lights accompanied him. Patient. Respectful. Never intrusive. He descended toward sections he had not yet explored. Below the archive levels. Below engineering. Toward the oldest portions of the vessel. The air remained perfect. Temperature unchanged. System steady. Nothing here behaved like machinery abandoned for 100,000 years. Everything behaved like machinery waiting for its next assignment. At the end of a long corridor stood a door unlike the others. Larger. Heavier. Without decorative markings. Purpose made visible. The panel beside it contained no handprint interface. No obvious controls. Just a smooth metallic surface. Lyra, Elias said quietly. What is this place? 3 seconds. The memory hall. The words carried unusual weight. Explain. Silence. Careful silence. Before entering the fold, many members of the crew elected to preserve cognitive imprints. Elias stopped walking. Cognitive imprints? Partial continuities. Another pause. Not consciousness. Not survival. Records sophisticated enough to respond as their creators would have responded. The implications arrived slowly. People. Not recordings. Not videos. Something closer. Something stranger. How many? 218. The number settled into him. 218 individuals choosing to leave behind fragments of themselves. Not because rescue was expected. Not because immortality was possible. Simply because someone might ask questions one day. And questions deserved answers. The captain? Elias asked. 3 seconds. Yes. The panel illuminated. The door opened. The memory hall existed somewhere between architecture and reverence. Blue light flowed through towering crystalline columns. Hundreds. Thousands. Arranged in careful rows. Each one containing moments. Lives. Conversations. Choices. The ship's memory given physical form. The sound within the chamber resembled breathing. Not literal breathing. Something deeper. A low resonance felt through the soles of his boots. The accumulated weight of remembrance. Elias walked slowly. Every instinct urged respect. No signs demanded silence. No rules existed. The room itself made noise feel inappropriate. How do I speak with him? He asked. State a name. Simple. Human. He considered. He did not know the captain's name. The logs contained none. 12 years of entries. Thousands of decisions. No self-reference. No unnecessary information. The kind of person who believed actions introduced themselves. Captain, Elias said softly. Nothing happened. Then, one crystal brightened. Blue shifted toward silver. Light gathered. Not a body. Not a ghost. An approximation. The memory of presence rather than presence itself. Elias stood perfectly still. Fear arrived. Not fear of danger. Fear of inadequacy. The fear people experience when standing before something that deserves more respect than they know how to provide. Captain, he repeated. I need to understand. The light remained motionless. Lyra spoke. The imprints communicate through associative structures. Pause. I will translate meaning into language. The air felt heavier. The response arrived. Not words. Understanding. Ancient humanity entered the fold with everything it had left. Every operational vessel. Every person capable of contributing. The final migration of a species that understood return was unlikely. No reserve populations remained outside. No hidden colonies. No secret plans. Humanity committed itself completely. The realization struck Elias with astonishing force. They had bet the species. Everything. On a single impossible attempt. What did it cost? He whispered. The silver light trembled. Lyra translated. The Void architects had spent 200,000 years constructing something inside the fold. A permanent anchor. A bridge between realities. Once completed, no barrier would remain. Every star in existence would become accessible. Infinite expansion. Infinite consumption. Humanity understood. And reached a terrible conclusion. The structure could not be captured. Could not be controlled. Could not be repurposed. Only destroyed. Piece by piece. At any cost. The war inside the fold lasted centuries. Different physics. Different rules. Different understandings of time. Human fleets dismantled the impossible construction while the architects defended every fragment. The language preserved in the records remained astonishingly simple. They took it apart. No grand rhetoric. No mythology. Just work. Necessary work. When the final sections collapsed, the fold itself began changing. The interface destabilized. The door started closing. Fast. One ship remained near enough to escape. The ship. Lyra. The captain made a decision. The ship would leave. The crew would stay. The order contained no debate. No speeches. No ceremonial goodbyes. Just necessity. The silver light dimmed. Another understanding emerged. The final log entry. 3 words. Elias had already found them. Had already read them. Yet here. Surrounded by preserved memory. They carried different weight. Hold this line. Not inspiration. Instruction. The last responsibility assigned to the future. The captain had not written a farewell. She had written a task. Something for whoever came next. The realization left him speechless. For several minutes nobody moved. The crystals hummed quietly around him. 218 preserved imprints. People who expected nothing. People who prepared answers anyway. People who understood that memory itself represented a form of duty. Finally, Elias spoke. Lyra. Yes. Did they think anyone would find this place? 3 seconds. No. The honesty hurt. They hoped. Pause. But hope and expectation are different systems. He closed his eyes. Ancient humanity had not preserved itself because rescue seemed likely. It preserved itself because truth deserved witnesses. Even delayed ones. Even impossible ones. Outside the ship, the Accord fleet maintained its positions. Waiting. Confident. Certain. Inside, a man from a civilization taught to think of itself as young sat among memories older than empires. And understood something fundamental. History survived because ordinary people chose to remember. Not because institutions permitted it. Not because governments encouraged it. Because somebody somewhere believed forgetting represented a form of surrender. Elias opened his eyes. The silver light remained. Patient. Steady. Waiting. What should I do? He asked. The question escaped before he intended it. Not to Lyra. To the captain. To a person who had sacrificed everything and left behind only 3 words. The translation arrived slowly, carefully, with all the weight of 100,000 years behind it. Some things cannot be protected by hiding them. The silver faded. The crystal returned to its quiet blue glow. The conversation had ended. Or perhaps, the answer had already been given long ago. Hold this line. 3 words. Enough for a war. Enough for a civilization. Enough, perhaps, for one frightened archaeologist sitting in the center of history. The decision arrived quietly. Not dramatically. Not with certainty. Certainly not with courage. It simply remained after every other possibility had exhausted itself. Elias sat in the captain's chair. The ancient stars rotated above him. The Accord fleet maintained orbital position. 22 hours had become 8. Then 6. Now, 4 hours remained. Outside, powerful institutions waited with the confidence of those who believed time itself worked for them. Inside, time had already chosen a different side. Lyra, Elias said. Yes. The Accord leadership knows the truth. 3 seconds. Yes. They've known for thousands of years. Yes. They buried it. Pause. They reorganized it. The precision of the language almost made him laugh. Historical consolidation. Narrative coherence. Stability. Civilizations possessed remarkable talent for describing uncomfortable actions in comfortable words. He looked upward. The stars of ancient humanity glowed softly. 2,300 systems. 90 billion people. 6,000 years of resistance. And afterward, silence. Not natural silence. Engineered silence. He thought about every classroom. Every historical archive. Every carefully constructed timeline. Humanity, the enthusiastic newcomers. Humanity, the youngest major civilization. Humanity still learning. The truth sat beneath 86 meters of forgotten stone. Waiting. Waiting longer than entire species had existed. The realization settled with extraordinary clarity. The galaxy had not forgotten. The galaxy had chosen forgetting. There was a difference. An important one. A dangerous one. Lyra. Yes. The communication systems. 3 seconds. Fully operational. Range? The stars shifted. Communication networks illuminated. Relay stations. Deep space transmitters. Ancient systems interfacing with modern infrastructure. At maximum power allocation, I can reach every active Accord relay simultaneously. Elias remained still. All inhabited systems? Approximately 417. The number hung in the air. 400 worlds. Billions upon billions of individuals. Children. Teachers. Workers. Scientists. People who had inherited a version of history that excluded its greatest sacrifice. He swallowed. The archive. Yes. The war records. Available. The administrative documents? Available. The evidence regarding historical consolidation? 3 seconds. Verified and preserved. He closed his eyes. One action. One irreversible action. And nothing would ever be the same again. The Accord could control planets. Armies. Governments. It could not control knowledge distributed across 400 civilizations. Truth moved differently. Truth refused borders. Can you prepare everything? The pause lasted exactly 3 seconds. Then, I have been preparing that transmission for 97,000 years. His eyes opened. Slowly. What? The lights dimmed gently. During maintenance cycles, sleep intervals, and system optimization periods, I refined dissemination protocols. Pause. I did not know if humanity would return. Another. I did not know who would arrive. The stars above rearranged themselves into communication patterns. Translation matrices. Educational frameworks. Contextual indexing. 100,000 years of patience transformed into preparation. So, Lyra said softly, I prepared for everyone. The statement nearly broke him. 97,000 years. Alone. On a dead moon. Maintaining systems. Remembering names. And quietly building a message for people who might never come. Not because success was guaranteed. Because duty existed independent of outcomes. The old humanity really had built differently. He stood. Walked to the bridge viewport. Beyond the artificial transparency, the Accord fleet held formation. The enforcement cruisers remained closest. Weapons ports closed. For now. Waiting. Confident. Certain. The way powerful things behaved when they believed the future belonged to them. Perhaps it had. Until today. Lyra. Yes. If we broadcast this. 3 seconds. The Accord cannot reverse the process. No. They'll come for us. Yes. With everything they have. Almost certainly. He nodded. The possibilities narrowed. Fight? Impossible. Fight? Meaningless. Surrender? Unthinkable. That left only one option. The same option ancient humanity had chosen when every reasonable calculation suggested failure. Move forward. Tell the truth. Accept consequences. Hold the line. The phrase returned naturally now. Not as history. As instruction. Outside. The communication channel activated. Admiral Saratha appeared again. Her composure remained perfect. Only her eyes had changed. Something tighter. Something more urgent. Dr. Mercer. He answered. Admiral. The assessment period has concluded. Pause. Accord authority now requires immediate transfer of all recovered materials. Recovered materials. An interesting phrase. As though civilizations could recover memory without changing. We can preserve this discovery responsibly, she continued. Together. The word together echoed strangely. Humanity had once fought alone. Together arrived afterward. Conveniently. Elias looked at her. Really looked. She wasn't evil. That would have been simpler. She was protecting a system. A civilization. An order that had existed for tens of thousands of years. People rarely defended lies. They defended stability. Even when stability required lies. I'm sorry, he said quietly. The Admiral became very still. For what? He glanced upward. Ancient stars. Ancient sacrifices. Ancient promises. For what happens next? The transmission ended. Silence returned. 4 hours. No, less now. Enough. Enough for one final act. He sat in the captain's chair. The chair accepted him without ceremony. As though understanding that some responsibilities arrived through necessity rather than inheritance. Lyra. Yes, Elias. He noticed she had begun using his name more frequently. As though familiarity represented another form of waiting finally ending. Begin full archive preparation. Confirmed. The ship changed. Not dramatically. Subtly. Lights brightened. Systems awakened. Deep beneath the vessel, mechanisms that had slept through epochs resumed activity. The low hum surrounding everything grew stronger. The sound of purpose rediscovered. Data moved. Compression algorithms executed. Translation matrices activated. 97,000 years of preparation approaching completion. Outside, the fleet remained confident. They still believed this was about a ship. About a discovery. About containment. They did not yet understand. The dangerous thing was never the vessel. Never the technology. Never the ancient weapons sleeping in forgotten hangars. The dangerous thing had always been memory. And memory, after waiting 100,000 years, was preparing to speak. Memory spoke. And the galaxy listened. Broadcast ready, Lyra said. The words arrived without drama. Without ceremony. The way sunrise arrives. The way gravity exists. The way truth eventually finds the surface after spending long enough beneath stone. Elias sat in the captain's chair. Outside, 6 Accord vessels maintained orbital position around Epsilon 41. Inside, 100,000 years waited for permission. He took one slow breath. Transmit everything. 3 seconds. Not hesitation. Acknowledgement. Then. Confirmed. The ship awakened. The deep hum running through its structure changed. Systems dormant for geological ages moved into perfect synchronization. Ancient transmitters engaged. Quantum relays aligned. The archive opened. And history left the grave. The signal erupted outward. Not a weapon. Not an attack. A memory. Every active relay in Accord space received it simultaneously. 417 inhabited systems. Billions of individuals. Schools. Universities. Research stations. Civilian networks. Government databases. Private terminals. The truth arrived everywhere at once. The first humanity. The age of horizons. The void architects. 6,000 years of war. The 4 billion who entered the fold. The civilizations that survived. The meetings. The agreements. The words historical consolidation. The decision to remember selectively. Nothing omitted. Nothing dramatized. Only facts. Pure. Precise. Irrefutable. The galaxy had spent 100,000 years constructing a comfortable story. The story ended in 6 minutes. The fleet reacted immediately. Warning channels opened. Encrypted communications exploded into activity. Weapons ports unfolded. Admiral Sarah appeared on every frequency simultaneously. Dr. Mercer. Gone was the calm professionalism. Gone was the measured distance. Only urgency remained. Terminate transmission immediately. Elias looked at the stars above him. They're already receiving it. Silence. The Admiral understood. 100,000 years of preparation. 97,000 years refining the message. The signal had spread too far. Too quickly. Containment no longer existed. The truth belonged to everyone. The first shot came 40 seconds later. The enforcement cruiser fired a controlled impact round. The ancient ship trembled. Not violently. Just enough to remind everyone involved that physics remained relevant. Damage assessment? Elias asked. Minimal, Lyra replied. They are attempting preservation. Another impact. Stronger. Warning shots were ending. Reality was beginning. Outside, the fleet repositioned. Scientific vessels moved away. Military vessels advanced. The confidence of institutions had transformed into panic. Because institutions understood one terrible thing. You can suppress evidence. You can suppress people. You cannot suppress a civilization once it begins asking questions. Communication networks across 400 systems erupted. Historians compared archives. Scientists analyzed the data. Teachers forwarded records. Students read names that had vanished from textbooks. Ancient species confronted documents their governments insisted did not exist. The fracture lines appeared instantly. They had always existed. The truth merely illuminated them. Lyra, Elias said quietly. Yes. What happens now? 3 seconds. The Accord will attempt interception. Can we fight? Yes. Pause. We would lose eventually. Honesty. Always honesty. Can we run? Yes. Where? The bridge grew still. The ancient star map shifted. Beyond known space. Beyond modern routes. A single marker appeared. The fold interface. The door. The line. The place humanity had entered and never returned from. Elias understood. The realization felt strangely inevitable. Ancient humanity had walked into darkness. Perhaps modern humanity would need to do the same. Not to escape history. To complete it. Another transmission arrived. Unexpected. Professor Talvek. The old Nareth appeared on the secondary display. He looked exhausted. And profoundly peaceful. The broadcast reached the fleet's internal systems 43 minutes ago, he said. Elias stared. Talvek. The Administrative Council is issuing corrections. Pause. No one is listening. For the first time since Elias had known him, Talvek smiled. A small smile. The kind mountains might produce after surviving storms. My people taught that stone remembers pressure, he said quietly. Given sufficient time, truth behaves similarly. The old geologist looked away briefly. Toward something outside the camera. Toward a future arriving faster than anyone expected. I read the records, he continued. The real records. Another pause. We were there. No excuses. No justifications. Only fact. My ancestors survived because yours refused surrender. The words settled heavily. History speaking through descendants. I do not know what obligations that creates, Talvek admitted. But I know they exist. Silence. Then. 3 words. The same 3 words. The ones that crossed 100,000 years without losing meaning. Hold this line. The transmission ended. Elias closed his eyes. The captain. The archive. Talvek. An instruction passed between generations. Between species. Between civilizations. Not ownership. Responsibility. The ship accelerated. Ancient engines awakened fully. The dead moon fell away beneath them. The fleet pursued. Weapons fire illuminated darkness. The old vessel moved with impossible grace. Not because age made it weak. Because age had taught it efficiency. Hours passed. Damage accumulated. Repairs activated automatically. Lyra remained calm. Always calm. As though surviving impossible circumstances constituted ordinary procedure. Eventually, the marker appeared. Nothing to ordinary sensors. Everything to Lyra. The fold interface. The last door. Status. Elias asked. 3 seconds. The pressure has stopped. He looked up. The knocking? Yes. Silence. For 300 years, something had pressed against the other side. Patient. Rhythmic. Waiting. Now. Nothing. As though the broadcast had been heard. As though whoever waited beyond understood. A final message arrived. Not from the Accord. Not from Talvek. From Lyra herself. Softly. Almost thoughtfully. I believe, she said, they were never trying to break through. Elias remained still. What do you mean? 3 seconds. The last careful silence. I believe they were telling us to hurry. The interface opened. Reality folded. The galaxy behind them continued changing. Billions of people reading forbidden history. Civilizations confronting inherited lies. Children learning names forgotten for 100,000 years. The truth moving faster than governments. Faster than fear. Faster than control. And ahead. Darkness. Beautiful. Impossible. The fold. The ship crossed. One moment. Stars. The next. Something adjacent to stars. Light behaved differently here. Distance possessed unfamiliar meanings. The universe itself seemed to breathe according to alternative rules. Then Elias saw them. Lights. Thousands. No. More. Arranged in vast corridors extending beyond visibility. Not military formations. Not defensive positions. Welcoming lines. Waiting lines. Patient lines. His throat tightened. Lyra, he whispered. How many? The ancient intelligence was silent for several seconds. Longer than ever before. Finally. I am still counting. The lights continued endlessly. A civilization. Or something that had once been one. 100,000 years beyond history. 100,000 years beyond memory. 100,000 years beyond ordinary definitions of humanity. They survived, Elias said. Not a question. Not really. Lyra answered with characteristic precision. They became. The distinction mattered. It mattered enormously. Behind him. The truth continued spreading through 417 worlds. Too many minds. Too many questions. Too much memory awakened to ever sleep again. The Accord would endure. But it would endure honestly. Or not at all. Ahead. Ancient lights waited in impossible darkness. Patient as stone. Steady as duty. The descendants of people who had walked into a closing door and held it open long enough for everyone else to live. Elias Mercer sat in the captain's chair of the oldest human ship in existence. The least important person in every room he had ever entered. Until history decided otherwise. The vessel moved forward. The corridor of lights remained still. Waiting. Welcoming. Remembering. He thought about the captain. About 218 imprints sleeping in crystal. About Talvek. About Lyra. About 4 billion people choosing responsibility over survival. He thought about 3 words. 3 words that had outlived empires. 3 words that had crossed 100,000 years. 3 words that remained sufficient. Sometimes you hold a line. Sometimes. The line holds civilization. And sometimes if you keep holding long enough, memory returns. If you'd like, I can now generate.